or good afternoon, depending on what coast you're joining us. Thank you so much and welcome to the first Hope at Home webinar. This is going to be a part of a series that we'll be doing throughout the summer, specifically because we understand that it's been financially and physically and emotionally difficult time for our community during this pandemic. And of course, the recent murder of George Floyd, which has brought up a lot of feelings of despair and as well as need for community action, which we as leaders need to acknowledge as we serve and represent our diverse communities. To meet these moments and to support all the amazing work that you are doing and that women are doing across our communities, Hope is launching a Hope at Home series. Our goal is to create an exchange of ideas that will move our community forward and connect women. It was only fitting that we started with a webinar that helps us build our coping skills and our need to endure during these hard times. Connecting and coping through mindfulness in partnership with Latinx Therapy and presented by Estee Lauder Companies is a way for us to give back and for all of you to take a moment to invest in your well-being. With this as a background, it is a pleasure for me to introduce to you a dear friend and a strong supporter of Hope, MC Gonzalez, Senior Vice President of Global Public Affairs for the Estee Lauder Companies. A fun fact about MC is that she has served as an assistant to the President, the First Lady Michelle Obama, from June 2013 through 2015. We have asked MC to help open up the webinar and share her perspective as a Latina leader. Thank you, MC, for joining us and welcome.
Gracias, Helen. It is a pleasure to see you healthy and here today and everyone else as well. So, buenos dias. Thank you to Hope for this opportunity. Hope has always been home for me, both personally and for the Estee Lauder Companies. Our partnership spans over a decade. You know, I know that there will be more Hope at Home series to come, and I'm looking forward to participating and listening into them. I know that oftentimes in our roles as Latinx mothers, daughters, sisters, friends, and colleagues, we tend to put ourselves last. And so I want to thank and celebrate Hope for creating this space where we can put ourselves first, because when we honor ourselves and take care of ourselves, then we can truly take care of others and our community. I'm fortunate, and I'm part of a company that has been around for almost 75 years, the Estee Lauder Companies, and one that was founded and continues to be rooted in family values. And so, like many of you in my career, I have managed through several significant crises: the tragic day of September 11th, the difficult financial downturn of 2008, and several others. But I think none of them could have prepared us for this COVID-19 crisis and situation. My heart goes out to any of you who have been personally impacted by this pandemic and all those afflicted during this time. And my gratitude goes to all around the world who are part of this global relief effort. At our company, we have taken this situation very seriously since day one. And in fact, we've taken important actions, probably very similar to the actions that Hope and the Hope community have taken to take care of our employees. We established an employee relief fund, providing immediate and critical financial relief to employees who have been impacted. We pulled together a medical advisory team across disciplines, occupational health, mental health, to continue to prioritize the well-being and health of our employees and our consumers. And we continue to produce thousands of hand sanitizers for frontline healthcare professionals at our R&D and manufacturing facilities around the world, so that we can make sure that we're doing our part in the communities and where we operate. And while there's a lot more to be done, and while we recognize that there is no perfect approach to managing through this unprecedented crisis, as a company, we continue to try to do our best and to keep the health and well-being of our employees and our consumers top of mind. During this time, we instituted at the company a reset day. And so every employee has gotten a day during the week to reset their intention of how they want to approach and work in this new normal. And so those of us working in the United States had our reset day earlier this week on Tuesday. So it was a very long Memorial Day weekend. And I shared with my team 3 things that I will be doing to reset, and I would like to share them with us today as well. My first is, I've committed to finding time in the mornings to meditate. And so while meditation is something that I would use once in a while in a moment of crisis or panic, I've now really built it into a routine, and I share it with you because it has been incredibly inspiring and relaxing. I'm also protecting an hour during my day, my work day, to eat and digest. Digest being just as important as eating. How many of us were eating quickly at our desk and missing meals and, sometimes just eating whatever we found along the way. And so I'm really prioritizing that hour. I know that sometimes that hour will get invaded. I'm okay with that as long as those invasions are the outliers and not the routines. And then last but certainly not least, I'm being intentional about asking more questions that can lead to either faster action or more thoughtful responses. And sometimes that's easier said than done. And so in conclusion, I leave you with, I come from a big Puerto Rican family, and so similar to Helen, my family, they are all on the island, and many of my family members and my friends have quite literally weathered a hurricane, Category 5, earthquakes, and now they're also facing this pandemic along with everyone else. And what has kept us going strong is our commitment to one another, to our family, to our friendships, and to our larger community. And so I know that we will all learn a great deal in this next hour, and I submit to you that if you take away just one thing from this morning, it's the importance of building and relying on our shared community and experiences for strong, sourceful, and resilience Latinx individuals that we are. And so I leave you with the serenity that the weekend is coming and that we're all in this together. So thank you, Helen. Back to you.
Thank you, MC. I love that the concept of serenity and meditation combined. Through meditation, it does bring serenity. So thank you so much. And as I'm looking at the chat, we are being joined from people all across, Latinas and leaders from all across the United States, which is very warming to my heart and very appreciative. And I just wanted you to know that we're acknowledging you and recognizing you. So once again, a big thank you to MC for helping us open up our web series, and to the Estee Lauder companies. Now it's a great pleasure for us, or for me in particular, to introduce Adriana Alejandre, who is the founder of Latinx Therapy. She is a trauma psychotherapist and a well-known speaker in our community. She is not only the founder of the internationally recognized Latinx Therapy, which is a directory of bilingual broadcasts that I can't say that word, but I'm going to try it later, mental health, and provides education to combat the stigma. So stigma through technology and actual mental health services. So what I'm trying to say is that we're in great hands with Adriana, who's helping us ensure that our community is getting the mental health needs that we have through a group of professional Latinx therapists across the United States. She specializes also in the struggle that adults are having with PTSD and from severe traumas, and in her private practice. She has done disaster relief work for Hurricane Harvey and Las Vegas shooting survivors. So we're in great hands with this webinar as I turn it over to Adriana.
Thank you so much, Helen. It was great hearing from MC. Today, I am also joined by my associate, April Mayorga, who is an associate marriage and family therapist. I will give her her full introduction towards the end for the sake of time now, but she will be doing our mindfulness exercise. So good morning, everyone. We see you in the chats. If you saw me fidgeting a few minutes ago, it's because I was having tech issues. My PowerPoint did not want to pull up. Finally, during the introduction, it started working, so we are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, everybody, and we are going to start with a quick activity. I know that there are so many people from all over, but if you bear with me to join me with this activity, I'm going to share my slideshow from the start here. Okay, don't look at the activity if you can see the side. My computer is so slow also. This is why I'm having some issues here, but my new one wasn't working. So, okay, we are on track. So yes, I am Adriana Alejandre, and I'm a therapist, I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker, I'm a podcaster. The podcast is called Latinx Therapy, and we are everywhere. It is a bilingual English and Spanish show talking about mental health myths and just bringing out really what our generations haven't been able to talk about because of just la cultura. There has been a lack of knowledge. Our people have been in survival mode, as we are currently because of this pandemic. So you can hear more, listen to the podcast on any podcatcher. And our website is latinxtherapy.com. So for this 5-second activity, I thought it would be appropriate that as Latinas, I know that even if we are in person or virtual, among one another, we shine, and we shine so bright wherever you are, regardless of what you're going through. So I would like you all to honor one another by looking at the camera and just shine your beautiful smile for 5 seconds. So here we go, 5 seconds, and let's start. Just smile. Okay, so that's 5 seconds. And if you have some anxiety, this is healthy anxiety. This isn't bad anxiety. It's okay. You can just shake it off. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move into the impact of COVID-19 on our Latinas' mental health. I wanted to share some statistics prior to COVID-19 about our mental health. So before COVID-19 even started, there are and have been 1/3 more suicide attempts among Latinas than white people. Okay, Latinx women are twice as likely to develop depression compared to Latinx men, white populations, or African American populations. And the prevalence is compared to, the prevalence according to NAMI is 40%, we are 46% higher than Latinx men. They are at 19.6. Research also indicates that employed Latinx women are more stressed than unemployed ones. And I thought that all of these statistics are important to highlight during this talk, because during this pandemic, these statistics are only going to get worse among Latinx women. Latinas are resorting to working for jobs that they are often overqualified for, and that is why Latinx women are more stressed than unemployed ones. So not only are they overqualified for certain jobs, but they are also underpaid. Latinas are financially responsible for perhaps not only their children, but also their parents, their families in other countries, barely able to make ends meet for their own selves. And COVID-19 has taken away or reduced many hours for Latinas. Job loss is associated with increased depression, anxiety, distress, and low self-esteem, and may lead to higher rates of substance use disorder, so using drugs, alcohol, or another form of behavioral addiction, and suicide, a word that we're often scared to use, but is happening every single day in our community. This pandemic spotlights both existing and new barriers to accessing mental health and substance use disorders, and any other mental health condition, really. We're really going to be feeling, if we haven't already been feeling, the mental health conditions that have been arising and really making a point in our lives and coming up in our lifestyles. So we don't have any new statistics because we're still in the middle of COVID. There's going to be new studies after the stay-at-home orders are lifted and when, you know, researchers can get more participants. But for now, this is what we have, and we can guarantee that these statistics are going to get worse, unfortunately, for folks of color. So the risk factors for our mental health conditions during COVID. So when I say risk factors, it's what makes us more vulnerable to mental health disorders, mental health conditions. And that is Latinas' socioeconomic disadvantage. That is our history of abuse, family disorganization or dysfunction, undiagnosed psychological conditions, community violence, and stigma. So these are factors that increase our chances of experiencing a mental health disorder. And then there's more, unfortunately, more risk factors that worsen our mental health during COVID. So for what I've been hearing is for Latinas that are among family members, they're experiencing a lot of comments about weight or skin color. Family secrets that just get too stressful to hold in. Alcoholism, whether they're experiencing it themselves and struggling because of the lack of routine and because of the lack of social interaction or social accountability, or they're seeing it among other family members. Dysfunctional relationships. During quarantine, we're supposed to stay away from loved ones, from people that are healthy to us even. So some Latinas are left to deal with people having no refuge, no social refuge, and deal with people that are unhealthy for them. Immigration status, machismo and toxic masculinity, system injustices, discrimination, being overworked, as I mentioned in the statistics, being underpaid, and chronic illnesses that we don't talk about among Latinas, unfortunately. So I'll just go ahead and go into the next slide here. But I just want to say that isolation definitely makes all of these conditions a lot worse. The social withdrawal, the fear of getting sick, también. We've grown up in this culture where nos resfriamos and we can get sick, right? El sereno, if we go outside with our hair wet, or just these not myths, but these sayings that really make us fear illness. And that is because historically, our people, especially if we come from immigrant families from other countries, they didn't have their parents, et cetera, the lineage, they didn't have insurance, they didn't have the resources to get well when they would get sick. So that is where that fear comes from. We've had a great loss of ancestors because of health related issues. All right, so all of this, and I'm going to check time. Okay. We're not going to be able to go through all of the PowerPoint slides here, but I made sure to have them up because I've given them to the admin and they're going to give this information over to you all. So the mental health impact of all of those risk factors leads into, in general, of course there's more, but 4 categories, and that's anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief and loss. The way that it manifests, anxiety, for example, during COVID, we have this need to prove ourselves, and that comes from imposter syndrome. But imposter syndrome is ultimately a form of anxiety. We're seeing so much going on that others are doing, or that now we're stuck at home with our families, and the role of Latinas at home is also from a historical context that we have to be cooking and cleaning and working and doing everything, being the pillar of the family. So some of us have this pressure to fulfill every single role and identity that we've been given, not that we give ourselves, but that we've been given. And anxiety also manifests as seeking validation. So looking for that validation, even if, because we're feeling lonely during COVID, even if it means seeking validation from unhealthy people. Codependency, going back into our old ways, going back into a relationship that we're dependent on, into an object, a habit that we depend on as well. People pleasing. When it comes to depression, this is how it manifests. We can compare ourselves to others during depression, and that just loops us back into this spiral of rumination, of negativity and lack of self-worth, lower self-esteem. We tend to isolate ourselves when we're depressed. Our sleep and eating patterns are also shifted. We either do more or we do less, as in we sleep more, we sleep less, and same with eating. And of course, this is just a brief snippet. Please know that there are more ways that it manifests, and that these can also mix and match, unfortunately. So what you see in anxiety, you could also see in depression, and what you see in depression is seen in anxiety and trauma and grief and loss. So keep that in mind. So during COVID, what a lot of people, especially Latinas, clients of mine and people that I speak with a lot, are sharing with me is, they're sharing with me these this description, these traits of dissociation. And dissociation, you could think of it as that it's an avoidance mechanism. It's a defense mechanism. When you space out, your body is there in the moment, but your mind is not. Okay, so you just dissociate from reality. You dissociate from the global pandemic. You kind of just blank out. You go away mentally. And this is a trauma response, because it's something that you did to survive a certain negative experience in order to get yourself through it. So I'm hearing that this is happening a lot. A lot of Latinas are high functioning, meaning that even if they have anxiety, depression, or trauma, they're able to function and get up, feed children, or help their parents pay their bills, take their showers, go to work, or work at home, and then go to sleep and repeat. But just because you are functioning through your mental health conditions doesn't mean that you're okay all the time. It doesn't mean that you feel good inside. So dissociation could be a role of that. During the pandemic, people are also experiencing a lot of hypervigilance. Hypervigilance meaning it looks like paranoia, where you're just like being extra observant, staying up late at night if there's more violence in the community, or an incident happened last week and you can't sleep because of it, so you stay up around that time. Hypervigilance is just being more cautious. Let's say you go to buy a coffee. You decide to, or let's just say you decide to go to Target, and it's really, really empty, but you keep looking behind you, like you're just feeling a little bit unsafe in where you're at. So that's how hypervigilance looks like in a nutshell. And grief and loss. Grief and loss is often thought of as losing someone, as losing a family member to death, but it doesn't always have to be. Grief and loss is what we're experiencing during this pandemic. When it comes to us losing our jobs, we experience grief. When it comes to losing a friend, not just to death, but just the loss of a relationship, you realize that this relationship is too toxic for you, and you decide not to be friends or be in a romantic relationship with that person. You experience this grief. And it looks similar to the grief you experience when you lose someone to death. So you also, underneath that, have this fear of abandonment. And to manifest, or as a manifestation of grief and loss, overindulging in work, working too much, becoming work alcoholics, or avoiding your responsibilities are common symptoms of honestly any of these, so that you don't have to deal with yourself. You're just dealing with something external because the internal is too much. All right, so I'm going to jump over then, because of time, to drinking and substance abuse. All right, so you're all going to have these. These are basically all the sayings that we're told to make us feel better culturally during these days. All you need to do is pray and talk to God. Todavía tienes trabajo, que tienes, you're not expected to have any feelings or mental health realities because you have a job. you're still functioning. So, but these are ultimately harmful. Okay, so before I end, I'm going to leave you with these, but the techniques that we are actually going to do are on this page. So we're going to practice right now deep breathing, and then we're going to do the butterfly hug. So let me just check in. I'm going to stop screen share. Just want to check in if we still have time. Someone can just let me know from admin if I'm okay on time to do these two techniques, or yes? Okay. All right. So deep breathing, and then I'll go back to the PowerPoint if I don't have any tech issues. But when we deep breathe, I really practice it from the diaphragm. So I call it diaphragmatic breathing. And that's what it's formally called too. Diaphragmatic breathing is belly breathing. And we are going to inhale as slow as possible, as slow as you can. And if you have a very difficult time with this one, and if it looks something like that, then that means there's a lot of anxiety sitting in your body. Okay. And you have to practice every single day to just slow your breathing, slow the inhalation, hold it, and then you're going to slow the exhale. It shouldn't be, okay, because that's all chest breathing. You need to bring it from your belly up to your chest and then out. So I'm going to say the instructions, and then you can go ahead or we could practice it all together. I want you all to inhale as slow as you can, only in through your nose. Okay, so it should last like 4 to 6 seconds. You're going to inhale through your nose, and then you're going to hold that breath. Excuse me. You're going to hold it for about 3 seconds, and then you're going to exhale as slow as possible. It took me 3 years to really understand my body and to be able to do this. So we're going to go ahead and begin. So only in through the nose, we hold, and only out from the mouth, very slowly. So here we go. Whenever you're ready. Okay, so that was one cycle. So if it's possible for you to practice this 3 cycles in one sitting every single day, or at least once a week, I encourage you to integrate this into your routine. The next one is also very brief. Oh, one last thing about deep breathing is that you want to fill up about 3/4 of your air capacity, not go all the way to a point when you're like, like sucking for air. Like, no, you want this to be a comfortable process. So just 3/4 or half of your air lung capacity. Okay. So this is butterfly tapping, and it's encouraged from EMDR, that modality. It's influenced by that. I am an EMDR certified therapist, and that's a modality specifically for trauma. So without disrupting this speaker here, what you can do is you can do it tap with 2 fingers or your whole hand, okay? You're gonna tap very slowly, either under your clavicle or over here. I like it here. Some people get triggered doing it here. It feels like they're suffocating, even though it's very gentle, and that's okay. That's a common response sometimes to trauma. You can do it here, or you can even cross and do it on your lap. Okay, so on your lap. I like it here. Of course, you have the liberty to move it wherever on your arm. And all you do is you just tap, 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 very slowly. If there is trauma in your history, physical trauma, it is possible that your mind, your body may not even register or feel yourself tapping. And that's okay. Accept that part of yourself and just practice this technique every night. Just 30 seconds. That's all that's needed. Okay. If you find yourself going faster, sometimes that's an anxious response. You want to go as slow as possible. And find the place, it's okay to move. Find the place that feels soothing for you. That's what you're trying to go for. You want to feel soothing. And you can breathe with this. This is a good somatic regulation technique. So it calms your nervous system. It does take a bit for many of my clients with a trauma history, of course, but this is a very effective technique for many. Of course, I'm going to pause right here. Of course, the techniques are not a one-size-fits-all. This is not a long-term solution for mental health conditions. We really need to process and give space to our feelings, to organize our thoughts as well. But these are definitely techniques that can regulate you. So I won't be able to go through the last one again due to time, but I just want to encourage everyone to allow yourself space to process and express yourself. Along with this, find ways that you can create resistance to what makes you feel bad. And resistance doesn't have to mean, like anything violent all the time, but it can be, I'm going to keep it as simple as, is resistance to something that's stressing you out. Would that be resting? Okay. Because a lot of times for Latinas, we have a hard time resting. So that could even be a little bit rebellious for us to take naps during the day. A form of healthy resistance. Is it advocating for yourself? Is it learning communication skills or learning how to set boundaries or setting them? Is it writing to politicians to modify laws? Is it honoring yourself by speaking kindly to yourself? Resistance looks different for everyone. I have a last slide here on that you're all going to get for long-term mental health care. Do the work first. I know many of us are frustrated with our families and really want them to benefit from mental health therapy or just the topic of mental health itself, and want to destigmatize their idea of mental health and our feelings. But we have to do the work first so that that message can be spread in our household. So, and you want to be selfish. You want to think of your needs first to do this work. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't be an octopus. I tried being an octopus during early days, my early ages. And, I would try to be a lifeguard. I would try to be a swim instructor all at once, a mother, a student. And it's a flaw to our mental health, and it hurts us more so. So clear your plate off of things. Begin saying no. Learn to self-validate and self-affirm yourself. Reach out for help, most importantly. For Latinas to get to a point where they're reaching out for help, it must, most of the time, majority of the time these days, it's still that 60% of the time it's for negative reasons, not for prevention reasons. So for any Latinas, anyone that's reaching out to you for help, connecting them with resources or just talking about their feelings, give space to them, or give them a space where they can express themselves if you don't have that emotional capacity. Find a support circle. You're going to have this in your prompt, in your PDF that is going to be shared with you, a post-quarantine journal prompt. And then I leave you with the quote, "Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives." Okay? And now I am so excited to introduce you all to April Mayorga. It seems like we will have a Q&A towards the end. So we can answer questions then. But April Mayorga, as I mentioned, is my associate. She just finished her hours, her 3,000 hours to become a licensed therapist. She's going to sit for the test in a few months after she studies for that exam. It's a 4-hour exam, so I'm so excited for her. And she is a mindfulness instructor and has learned this approach from various different sources. And she, in a conversation, she also said that she learned this abroad as well, some of these practices. So today she has customized this meditation on inner child and self-appreciation. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Adriana. So I will be guiding you all into an inner child and self-appreciation meditation. We made this specifically for you all for hope, in order to help our culture. And, oftentimes meditation can be very scary and non-approachable, but hopefully this is a way that you all can relate and really be open to this experience. So I invite you all where you are now to sit comfortably, and you want to lengthen up your spine as you sit upright. So you can imagine that there's an invisible string that's gently pulling at the top of your head, not too straight or tense, and you don't want to be too slouched, just a peaceful and relaxed posture that allows your spine to align evenly. I want you to broaden up your collarbone, pull back and drop your shoulders if you can. And just let your hands rest on your thighs. And then your palms can face up or they can face down. Just finding a place to rest your hands that feels most comfortable. And once you've found your meditative posture, I want to invite you to close your eyes. If this feels uncomfortable for you, you can soften your gaze and look towards the ground. And again, if your eyes are closed, I want you to allow your eyelids to soften. And slowly begin to awaken your awareness of the body. So you'll notice your feet planted on the ground. And then noticing where your seat bones meet the chair. Just feeling your body from the inside and out. And now begin to tune to your breath. Again, as Adriana mentioned, inhaling through the nose and then exhaling through the mouth if that feels comfortable. Some of you might inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose, and that's perfectly okay. It's whichever cycle of breathing feels best for you. Now again, taking a long, profound inhale and inhaling and pulling in as much oxygen as you can into the lungs. Again, holding this for a few moments at the top and exhaling slowly and unpressured. Again, taking another deep inhale, filling your body with air. Holding and then slowly releasing. On your next breath, I want you to breathe into any uncomfortable areas of your body. Anything in your body that may be distracting you, just breathe into that area. Noticing it. And as you exhale, I want you to release that tension and discomfort. And just continue these breathing cycles, one after the next, as we continue on this meditation. And I want you to place now both hands over your heart and continue to inhale and exhale. Noticing your chest rise as you inhale, and then it deflates as you exhale. Just ask yourself, how does it feel to place my hand over my heart? Over this area of my body where I experience love for others and love for myself. Taking in these sensations. Now I want you to visualize revisiting your younger self. And you can visit yourself as age 6 or 7. Maybe you want to visit yourself as 11 or 12. Just visualize your younger self. And I want you to give yourself, your younger self, a large embrace, a large hug, and feel yourself reconnecting with your younger self. And I want you to invite you to offer yourself the following affirmations. And this is you speaking to your younger self. You can say this inside your mind. You are worthy. You are doing the best that you can. You are enough. And breathing, noticing what you're experiencing as you recite these statements. And now I want you to be able to give this positivity and love to yourself today, in this present moment, the person you are. I am worthy. I am doing the best that I can. I am enough. And notice if you're open to receiving this self-appreciation. Just stay in this moment of self-love. And tell yourself, I am worthy of happiness. And imagine that you could breathe into your heart and visualize love pouring out of your hands, the hands that are over your chest right now, and into your heart. And let this warm feeling reach and extend to fill your entire body, extending from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, through the length of your arms, just filling your entire body. Breathe and know that this love you have created for yourself today will always be available to you when you need it. And I want you to take 3 more breaths at your own pace. And when you're ready, I invite you to return back to this space with us. Thank you all for being open to this experience. And I hope that you can really stay present with this feeling, this self-appreciation and love that you've offered to yourself and received. And I hope that you take it with you throughout the rest of your, not only today, but your week as well.
Thank you so much, April. And ladies, we have a couple of questions if you are open to answering them. I think there's some really great questions here. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana. I am Hope's Deputy Director of Youth Programs. Thank you for being here with us today. So one of the first questions that came in is, I think, a very important one and one very prevalent in our community. So the question is, due to self-quarantine, how do you cope with a family member who has an addiction problem and is in denial, and that now you're forced to be spending more time with them as we're not allowed to, or we're suggested to stay home as much as possible? How can one cope with that? Or any advice that either of you, Adriana or April, can share?
Yeah, so April, I know that you specialize and have more experience than I do in addictions. Is this something you're comfortable answering?
We can both answer if that's okay. So
Yeah,
I think, go ahead. Okay. I think now especially we are within the same space and definitely witness to some of the behaviors that are a cause of addiction. So oftentimes, like Adriana mentioned, trauma triggers can be exacerbated if this is something that a family member has experienced for a length of their time, of their life, and that could include childhood. If this is something that they witness with their family member for a long time, and this could be very difficult. Unfortunately, I know that oftentimes we cannot get our loved ones who have addictions into the proper treatment centers because as we know, in the state of California, at least, it is most of the time has to be voluntary. So I think coping skills could include setting boundaries. Adriana, that's a part that you can jump in and answer about boundaries.
Yeah, and it's tricky because you can try to set boundaries, but because addictions, impair judgments, you're not gonna get the respect or the expectation that you're imagining you would when people talk about setting boundaries. So you have to, one, go in knowing that if you are gonna speak to this person about such boundaries, don't set any expectations for yourself. Just go in knowing that you're planting a seed. You're hoping to plant a seed, and that person is going to grow that seed when they are ready to grow it into whatever it is, whatever healthy, beautiful thing it'll be. But that's going to be on their time. However, if this is a person that is causing disruption among other family members, it may be helpful to bring in support from other members. Is there someone else that this family member responds better to? And sometimes, unfortunately, that's the case with our family members. Sometimes I may not be the person for X family member, but you know what? X family member listens to this other person more so. So seek out support. And if there's ultimately no one, then it may be helpful to look into intervention resources. So there are quite a bit of places that do accept insurances, hopefully, if this person has insurance, and you're able to bring in someone to assist you with an intervention in your home. Now, I know that we're here during COVID, so we have to do what we can given the restrictions. So if you're not able to communicate with them, then I would say that you have to find refuge and safety in your home. I know typically therapists don't say avoid, but in this case, it would be healthier for you to avoid.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Our next question is, what resources are available for Latinx women who don't have health insurance and are living in rural, non-multicultural communities? And then I guess there's a second follow-up question. What advice do you give them in coping with their mental health if they don't have access to therapy?
Yes. So if you do not have insurance, if you do not have insurance, but there are minority therapists or Latinx therapists in the state that you live in, then I encourage you to reach out to them and let them know your circumstances. Let them know that you don't have insurance, and typically therapists will offer reduced rate, but only if asked for. Go ahead and ask that if they have a sliding scale or reduced rate. And if there are, and you can do virtual. I know that we're doing virtual everything, but pre-COVID, for people that lived in rural communities and didn't have access to like a Spanish-speaking therapist, they would do phone calls with someone else in their state. And now if there's absolutely no one in your state that speaks the language or specializes in what you need, then I recommend looking into a life coach. So a life coach that has reduced lots and can see you from any other state. Outside of that, and I know that that's not therapy, that's very, very different work, but it could be helpful. Outside of that, there are also agencies, colleges, universities that offer many programs at reduced cost or no cost. On latinxtherapy.com/resources, I put together with 200 other volunteers before Latinx Therapy launched. We called a lot of nonprofit organizations that had bilingual staff, and we put them in this database. So you can go on there and filter legal, food banks, mental health services per state. So that's latinxtherapy.com, and that's under the nonprofits. Did I answer that, Diana?
Yeah, I think you did. One more, couple more questions here, but we have someone who's based out of Minneapolis. And so obviously they're experiencing a lot of emotions with the pandemic, but also what's happening in their city. Any advice on coping while, there's all this unrest, and then also still being expected to be productive at work, right?
Yeah, I cannot imagine what you're going through. And it's such difficult times, especially when your community is mourning and hurting in such way. And all that stress that you're feeling, from the tensions outside of your home, literally. So if you're expected to be productive, I would even question, like, what does being productive mean? having this conversation with your employer, given the circumstances, because it may mean that they can be flexible enough to reduce work expectations. Sometimes, though, what I do find with a lot of my clients is that they set their own expectations and they're higher than what the employer is actually expecting. So if that's the case, self-reflect on that productivity that you've set your mind to. As Latinas, we do that very automatically because that's how we're raised. We're raised to go above the bar, right? To get out of poverty, to get out and hustle. So I would encourage you to reflect on that, and encourage you also to just allow space for yourself to find safetyness, to find peace within yourself, either using this meditation that April has shown us. I'll also tell you to look up on YouTube the safe place meditation. And sometimes it could be just so healing to be able to control our minds and have our minds take us to this place where we actually feel safe. And it could be real or imaginary. So there are certain meditations that will guide you differently. And so that's what I would recommend during these times. April, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we should all do is just acknowledge, right, what's happening, and not try to push away your feelings about this and try to not think about them. If it is healthier for you to not think about them and give yourself space, maybe productivity for you will be like making sure you're getting enough water throughout the day. It might be limiting your media intake, what you see on the news, lying down, talking to a loved one. If you want to increase your feeling of safety, maybe phoning a support system that lives nearby and making sure that they're safe, creating some kind of community safety plan in case you encounter something dangerous. I know that there has been fires and different sorts of street situations that have been happening. But, if you can create safety through community, that is something that I would recommend as well.
Excellent. Our next question here is, someone works with first-generation Latinx high school seniors and who will soon be experiencing unique challenges in their transition into higher education because of the pandemic. So their academic school year next year is not going to look like generations before. This is already a traumatic and difficult time. It's also, I guess they're seeking guidance on how, as counselors, they're probably a high school counselor, how they can best serve their students, what advice they can give them to kind of calm some of the anxiety.
Yeah, important question. So for this one, I encourage counselors to see each student individually, because sometimes we tend to lump them into all of them being anxious, or all of them experiencing depression, or all of them experiencing grief. And what we're finding is that that's not the case. Children are very resilient, even the 17-year-olds. And so see them individually. For the ones that are experiencing, depression, grief, loss of not being able to have a traditional transition to college or exit out of high school, then finding that the resources where they can build that community, where they can still feel like there's normalcy. And so I guess it's more so like increasing awareness into such normalcy that they do have currently, and also trying to find a quote that instills some sort of affirmation that this too shall pass, that this is something historical that we're going through. They're part of something that has never happened, and yes, that is very unfortunate for absolutely everybody, all of us, them included. So validating them, giving them space to be able to talk about what it is that they and their families are going through, especially if they are minority students, because they're not only experiencing challenges academically, there's also challenges that they're experiencing at home with relationships with friends. It's a very confusing time. So giving them the leeway to navigate more so of the session, more so of the content of where they need guidance.
Yeah, I want to add, definitely holding space for them, as well as, as a school counselor, and, children are going to be at school, hopefully 8 hours a day. And that could be their their place of safety. So if you can promote that and encourage some positive engagement, maybe that is the only positivity that they get during the day. So if you can create that space for them through laughter, through play, through engaging teens, especially, they are very interested in talking to someone who relates to their interests. And a lot of children right now are watching Netflix. And so what was the favorite show that you were watching? So kind of creating a lighter space for them as well.
Thank you. And then another question that we have here, which I think a lot of people have this question, is what recommendations do you have, or how can you go about seeking a therapist during this time if you've never been in therapy before?
My favorite question of all. It's a very exciting question because it's the seed that's blooming, right? So I put together on latinxtherapy.com frequently asked questions. So on the home page, you'll be able to see these frequently asked questions, things that you should be asking a therapist. And of course, there's so many more. But you can pick and choose some of these questions. You can go on directories, such as Latinx Therapy's directory, and find a therapist based off of what it is that you're seeking help for. So is it anxiety related to COVID? Is it depression or even a divorce? So just there's so many filters on every single directory that you go on, and being picky with your therapist. Don't be afraid to be picky. Every therapist should be offering some type of free consultation. It should be anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. Where you get to ask them these questions, set the expectations, and make an appointment, or they'll give you referrals in terms of who would be a better fit for you. A lot of therapists are also delaying on callback times. So typically where it's 24 to 48 hours, for me, it's like 2 to 3 weeks callback. It's a very difficult time. So knowing that callback times are longer, unfortunately. But I encourage you to call and send an email. If you're using insurance, you can, there's honestly a lot of Latinx therapists don't accept insurance for various reasons, but I will encourage you to call your insurance, because that is where you will get the most accurate, updated list of providers that are still in network with your insurance panel. So calling them and then asking them for behavioral mental health therapist within a 10-mile, 20-mile radius of a zip code, your zip code of your choice, either work or home, right? And if you want a Latinx therapist, then they don't usually have them providers listed by, cultural background. But my trick is to ask for a Spanish speaking therapist and then, kind of research them based off of their names and call them. So I hope that's helpful, and you're welcome to reach out to us.
All right. Thank you, ladies. I think those are, I apologize. I know that we have a lot more questions, but those are all that we have time for right now. I want to thank Adriana and April for joining us today, and Latinx Therapy for putting this amazing mindfulness workshop together for us and starting the conversation in our community. Thank you to MC Gonzalez and the rest of the Estee Lauder team for your partnership. And I just wanted to thank our affiliates for sharing this information with your networks. This is an important conversation, and we're happy and glad to see so many of you here with us today. I also wanted to mention before we close that Hope is hosting our Latina History Day, our Latina Action Day conference, which is our public policy conference virtually this year from June 10th to June 12th, and we'll be focusing on California policy, which is specifically focusing on the state budget crisis, the future of Latina education in the state of California, and of course, talking about the economic and workforce recovery for the state. So we will be sending more information on that event in the follow-up email, along with the contact information the PowerPoint slides, and then the website address for Latinx Therapy if you have more needs in that aspect. So thank you everyone for being with us, and we hope you have a wonderful Friday.